எதன் கண்ணே நிலையாகி இருந்திடும் இவ்வுலகமெல்லாம் எதனின்று அனைத்துலகும் எழுமோ மற்றிமையாவும் எதன் பொருட்டாம் எதனால் இவ்வையமெல்லாம் எழுந்திடும் இவ்வெல்லாமும் எதுவேயாகும் அதுதானே உளப்பொருளாம் சத்தியமாம் அச்சமும் அகத்தில் வைப்பார். By Bhagavan's grace, we are coming upon the first verse in the உள்ளது 40 அனுபந்தம். We saw that the Mangalam Shloka has been taken from Yoga Vasishtam, and as the உள்ளது 40 first Mangala Shloka covers the Ulla Porul and the Sadhaka, here the Mangala Shloka covers that the Satswarupa is the source of the whatever kind of words one may conceive of. All the words have their source, their sustenance, and their end in the Swarupa on which Bhagavan is asking us to meditate. That is, to meditate on that is to abide as that, Bhagavan says. We go on to the first verse, which has been taken from Bhaja Govindam. சத்திடக்கத்தினால் சார்புகளும் சார்புகளாய் சித்தத்தின் சார்பு சிதையுமே சித்தச்சார்பற்றாரலைவிலதில் அற்றார் ஜீவன் முக்தி பெற்றார் அவரிடக்கம் This has been taken from Bhaja Govindam of Acharya Shankara. We have started focusing on each of these verses from the perspective of practice of Atmauchara. So we are not going into each of the works from which the verses have been taken. On the other hand, we stay focused on Atmaucharam and we go through the verse for its contents directly. And this verse is the simple verse which is supposed to be coined by one of the disciples of Adi Shankara. Adi Shankara, of course, is said to have composed the first 12 of these verses and the rest by his disciples. And the work, of course, has its beginning, as Swami Brahmananda Ji says, in the walk of Adi Shankara along the streets of Kashi, and he finds quite an old gentleman learning by heart a part of Sanskrit grammar, Dukhan Karne. He is trying to by heart it, and Shankara's heart goes out to him and goes out to all of us when he says that nahi nahi rakshati, that in this age when the end is nearing, when clearly your eyes have shown that this is the time to pray, time to meditate on Govinda, instead of that you are trying to learn logic and grammar. It will not take you anywhere, says Shankara to all of us. And Brahmaji has this interesting way. I can take his example because we are not going to refer to the rest of the verses or his talk. He says, the event you can visualize today if on the roads you see two old gentlemen playing marbles. Like if we of today see a 60, 65-year-old or 70-year-old couple of gentlemen playing marbles on the road, what will be our feeling? Much more was the feeling of Adi Shankara, and out of that feeling, he gives the Bhaja Govindam, which brings in a lot of vairagya. And this particular verse is on the Satsanga. And the first 5 verses of Anubandha are on Satsanga. And Bhagavan is very trickily asked by one of the visitors or devotee, I don't know whom. One of them asks him, how is it that you have written these 5 verses on your own company or your own self? That being with you or being in your company is going to give so much good. And Bhagavan answers that, no, these were not composed by me. I only took down what those great ones said about Satsanga. So it was never about me, not composed by me, but all the 5 have been taken from the Upadesham of great ones as to how great Satsanga really is. Satsangatve Nisangatvam, Nisangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatve Jivan Mukti. Sattinakkatinal Sarbagal, Sarbala Sittatin Sarb Sidayume, Sittachar Vatra, Alaiviladi Atra, Jivan Mukti, Petra, Avarinakam Pe. Here Bhagavan adds one small phrase at the end. Jivan Mukti, Petra is up to what Shankara has written. Satsangatve Nisangatvam, Nisangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatve Jivan Mukti. That is where Adi Shankara ends. Bhagavan says, Petra Avarinakam Pe. So those who have attained this, or those who have been blessed with self-realization, seek out their Sangha, seek out their company, is what Bhagavan has added. And to meditate on this verse is our real good fortune. But so many gems come out of satsang. So many gems come out of satsang. We find that satsanga is one of the sentinels, one of the gatekeepers suggested by Yoga Vasishtam. Yoga Vasishtam suggests 4 sentinels. 4 sentinels to the gateway for mukti. They are self-control, then enquiry, vichara, then contentment, santosha, and finally satsanga. Self-control, vichara, contentment or santosha, and finally satsanga. Now, Yoga Vasishtam also goes ahead and says that if you practice any one of them also, you can practice all 4 of them, but even if you practice one of them, any one of these sentinels, that sentinel will take you through the doorway to mukti. And Bhagavan gives us the sentinel of Atma Vicharam, which we find when we practice Atma Vicharam, automatically self-control comes in the wake. Because what is observed is the ancestor to every action. What is self-control normally referred to? Normally self-control refers to an observation and control over the actions. Since self-inquiry is taking one to the observation of thought, and since thought is the ancestor to action, self-control comes automatically in the wake of self-inquiry. Contentment is the very nature of self-inquiry. Discontentment is rooted out by attention to the I. So self-contentment comes through, and since the last root that apparently separates one from the source, from the Sat Vastu, is removed or is put light on by self-inquiry, Satsanga is also automatic. The other three sentinels come automatically. As Yoga Vasishtam says, anyone if you follow, the other three will come automatically. That is about the Satsanga, the being brought about by Atma Ucharan. And that is how Sadhuvam Swamigal translates the meaning of this verse. Sadhuvam Swamigal, he translates the meaning of Sattinakattinal Sarbagalum. He translates that by association with the Sat Vastu or with the self-realized jnanis, the attachment to worldly objects will be removed. When the attachment to worldly objects is removed, then the internal tendencies or Vishaya Vasanas are also removed. Now, the Nirmohatvam is considered to be an attack on Maya in the general description of Satsangatva, Nisangatva, Nirmohatvam, to the removal of delusion. But Sadhuvam Swamigal, staying tuned with Bhagavan's teachings, calls removal of Maya as removal of Vasanas. As the Vasanas, as Maya comes out from what is Maya? Maya is that force which pushes the individual into the area of seeking happiness, where happiness is not there. But that push is thwarted by self-inquiry, by attending to each vasana diligently as it comes in the form of thought and erasing the vasana. So the Nisangatvam and Nirmohatvam, the removal of delusion, is translated by Sadhuvam Swamigal as removal of vasanas or tendencies. Now, the moment the vasanas are completely destroyed, there are no more hidden enemies in the fortress. What happens is that there is nothing to push the eye into the area of delusion. And Nischala Tattvam, the Jiva is now able to experience the self, the unmoved self, that which does not have any change. The Nischala Tattva is now experienced by identification. And this experiencing of Nischala Tattvam by identification is called as Jivan Mukti. The Jiva Bhava is once and for all erased. I am that I am is alone the experience of the Jivan Mukta. In Bhagavan's teachings, abidance in the self alone is self-realization. He doesn't give different types of mukti. He just says that Ulladunara, Unarvu Vedinpai, Ulladunarvakun Undipara, Unarve Nam Ayuda Undipara. The Jivan Mukta has to abide as the self. The experience is the I am that I am. I am that I am. So, Kritya Pastikin asks Bhagavan, when I am that I am alone is there, what is there for the Jivan Mukta to do? Because everything is the self, everything is I. That is why it is said, any action done or any action not done does not bring any consequences to the Jivan Mukta, because the absolute truth of the self alone is realized completely. And Sadhuvam Swamigal, true to translating Bhagavan's Tamil verse, he says, find out such a one and associate yourself with him. So that is the meaning of the verse. The meaning of the verse is, when you associate with the great ones, or when you associate with the Atma in Atma Ucharan, what happens is that the attachment to worldly objects, the sensory objects, start dropping off. As the attachment to worldly objects drop off, one is able to attend to the inner attachment or the inner rising of vasanas, and they also get removed one by one. When the inner vasanas are all completely removed, one is now having nothing to do. There is nischala tattvam. And when one is still, the be still is realized as one's nature, that is the Jivan Mukti, the liberation from Jiva Bhava. Now, we find interestingly that instinct too comes to the illusory nature of Jiva Bhava, but how he comes is in a different way and very interesting way. That illusion can be looked at in that way also. The Maya can be looked at in that way also. Now, that is contained in the article called Physics and Reality. Einstein's suggestion is very interesting. He comes to study the necessity of truth, because physics itself is on very sticky wicket, he says. It is not having strong principles yet during his time, and it is just dealing with the sensory experiences. Physics can deal only with what the senses can reveal. And Einstein himself finds senses are a part of the psychic experience. Only a part. There is much more in psychic experience. So he says the sensory experiences are one portion of the psychic experiences. That's all. It's not the whole. Then he comes upon this suggestion. See how our body is experienced through senses. He finds that to experience the body, we need the sensory experiences that are all universally present. Only when all the sensory experiences that are universally present are taken account of, one can say one's body has its existence. But how do we consider? Each one of us considers by our own sensory experience. We feel this is me and I am apart from the rest. What Einstein says is, for this body to be experienced, all the sensory experiences ever experienced in humanity are required, are the adhara. That means the whole worldly experience is the adhara for existence of the body. But out of a few experiences of eye, touch, smell and all that, we identify there is something that rises in us and says, I am this and I am separate from the rest. He says, this I am separate from the rest, I am separate from the whole, is called optical illusion by him. And he suggests that we should develop love for everybody, and that's something else. But that point of description of Maya is equally interesting because it's very practical and we can understand why it is Maya, why it is delusion. Because we really cannot be separate from the rest, but there is something that arises, a separate consciousness which arises in us and says, no, I am distinct. If I am saved, that's enough. If whatever happens to the rest, let it happen. If somehow I am protected, I am having security, that is enough. That is the optical illusion, that we are separate from the rest. Having seen that, now let us go into satsang proper. Some of the experiences of satsang is that, of course, association with Bhagavan's Samadhi and Arunachala have been great satsang for me. in Arunachala, the Girivalam, whenever we would discuss something there, one event was we were discussing Upadesha Saram. About 3 of us did continuously 3 Girivalams on different months, 3 different months. But the 3 Girivalams were done with Upadesha Saram 10 verses to be discussed in Maya. And in one of those Girivalams, when we were discussing the verses, one sadhu from the ashram was following us, unknown. And he was telling, are such meaning possible? Like he has actually gone into a lot of meditation of Upadesha Saram and listening to us, he was saying, are these meanings possible? They are so beautiful and they help me in my meditations. Actually, none of us were capable of meditating like that. It is totally due to the satsang of Arunachala. In Arunachala, when one does Girivalam, then there is a depth to which one is taken. which is automatic, which is due to the grace of Arunachala. Similar is my experience with Bhagavan's Samadhi. In whatever time, whenever I have gone and sat before Bhagavan Samadhi, up to that point in my life, whatever has been the subtlest meditation I have had, that will come like that. That the consciousness will be taken to that point by the presence in Bhagavan Samadhi in like that. It won't take any time at all. And if anything to be taught to me, that will happen in that moment. Otherwise, I'll be allowed to be there in that. That is Satsanga. Bhagavan is alive, Arunachala is alive, they are totally present. That is Satsanga, where the sadhana is deepened, is really taught to us, unknown to us. Now, the same experience used to be had in Atma Vicharam, in Bangalore or in some other place also. Interestingly, we used to, my better half used to live in a house in Hubli. That was her assignment there. And she had started Parayanam of Bhagavan after 6-7 years of Aksharamanamale. And in Ulladunarpadu, she got in touch with the Atma Vicharam. And she said, "Now you are not needed anymore." And she said, "You can go. I am able to do Atma Vicharam on my own." At that time, she was transferred to Hubli. And it was about a year of Hubli stay. There used to be a small niche where the Bhagavan's photo was kept and she used to meditate. So whenever I would go there, if I go into that niche, I can feel that that is a meditative place. That when you sit in a particular place, a particular sofa or whatever, and do your Atma Vicharam, then that place, the molecules or atoms in this, they are not changing as fast as the atoms in your body. They absorb the change, whatever mental state is there, they absorb that and they retain it. And on a tired day, on a day of agitation, if you come and sit there, it automatically brings you down into meditative state, and then Atma Vicharam can start. So it makes a lot of sense to have a particular place in our home, to sit there at particular times and do our sadhana. That becomes satsang. Because when we do our actions and come back after a tiring day, we can easily find that place has retained some of the vibrations and it is able to quieten us down. Then, as we proceed in Bhagavan, the beauty of Atma Vicharam is that it starts revealing to us why Bhagavan has set up the ashram at the foothill. What happens when the summit of the hill is chosen? If you have a morning walk down here, now there is Bangalore is full of ups and downs. If you go down to the valley where the Devagada petrol bunk is there, where the 4 roads cross and go, that's the lowest point. In that point, the mind is automatically quiet. Similarly, once you climb the hill and go to the summit where King's College has been set up, you will find that nature is cooperating. You are cooperating with nature, and Atma Vicharam is very, very easy. And what Atma Vicharam does is, it reveals satsang to us. The more clearer you do Atma Vicharam, the more clearer you are able to associate with the right thoughts, with the right place, with the right people. Keep practicing. Why these schools of Sai Baba has been set up in that place in Chikpadapur amidst 7 hills in that valley? Just if you go there, you will find that the practice of your own meditations are the easiest. When you go to the Ganges in the morning, in the Brahma Murta, how Amma flows, why all those ashrams are set up there? Ganga is the satsang there, is the sant that is there. The flow of Amma, it just washes out your mind. There is nothing to be kept in you. You don't need to do anything, just sit there. The rishis have worked that out. How to make it easy for the disciples. Just come and stay in the ashram, that is enough. There was a Swamigal called Nambi Swamigal, whom we had met in Tiruvannamalai. I met him in the Shivananda Ashram near the Ganges. For a day I had gone there, and he said, see, this is flowing Arunachala. Ganges is flowing Arunachala. Arunachala is standing Ganges. But for me, Arunachala is everything. To think of Arunachala is satsang. To read Bhagavan's talks with Ramana Maharshi is satsang. Now we find in Yoga Vasishtam that Yoga Vasishtam is full of guided meditations. We found the meditation of Bali Chakravarti, where thought by thought, he eliminated the object and brought us to the Atma. When we revisit that, the guided meditation of Bali Chakravarti, it is so simple and so profound. He says, can that mountain exist without the consciousness? It is not possible for that mountain to exist without the consciousness. Therefore, that mountain is nothing but another form of this consciousness. Can my inner hatred or love exist without my consciousness? No. Therefore, the hatred and other emotions are also only consciousness. Can the thought of other people and the thought of my own ego exist without consciousness? No. As individuals and this individual are nothing but consciousness. Now I am left with only consciousness. This consciousness has no division as subject and object. And that divisionless consciousness is me, the self. This is the guided meditation given to us from Yoga Vasishtam. Is that not satsang? The association with those thoughts, that is the thought of the Rishi. The Rishi Vasishta has given us those thoughts so that when we meditate on that thoughts, Yoga Vasishtam is in us. The Rishi is in us. And within us, remaining within us, he is teaching us. How he is teaching us? Take these thoughts, drop the objects, drop the other people, drop your inner emotions. There is only consciousness. Let us see one guided meditation of Bhagavan. How beautifully yeah. This is talk number 18. When we read talks with Ramana Maharshi, Chadwick or Sadhu Arunachala, he says, each sentence is golden. Not a single sentence should be left as unnecessary. Because each of them is going to turn us inward. When we read with Shraddha, literally the living, ever-present Maharishi is in front of us, teaching us in his own inimitable style. Chadwick writes like that. When we read talks with Ramana Maharshi, the thoughts of Bhagavan, the thoughts with which Bhagavan took his devotees to the self, takes us to the self. That is the beauty of reading the Satcharita of the great words. Let me read talk 18 to you to have a feel of how the words of Bhagavan takes us to the Atma, takes us to the self and gives us the Nirmohatma. Mr. Brunton mentions a yogi in Madras who is said to hold communion with his master in the Himalayas. So, Mr. Brunton has written about a yogi in Madras who says he is having regular meeting. Those days there was no internet and no Google Meet. But the gentleman says he has a regular meeting with his master in the Himalayas. Bhagavan. It is not more marvelous than telepathy, so commonly known. Telepathy cannot exist without the hearer, and television cannot exist without the seer. What is the difference between hearing from far and hearing from near? It is only the hearer who matters. Without the hearer, there cannot be hearing. Without the seer, there cannot be vision. How Bhagavan beautifully eliminates distance, television, telepathy, everything for us. Those objects are all removed And he says, what is the constant? The constant is the eye. The television cannot happen without the seer. The audio cannot be heard without the listener. So hold that which is the eye. So by asking us to hold the eye, Bhagavan gives us non-attachment to the sensory world. So somebody says such a beautiful thing has happened. This person is able to hold conversation with somebody in the Himalayas. Don't you think it is great? Bhagavan says, what is so great with that? No, we know it's not great because technology has helped us not only talk to people in Himalayas, but talk to people even in farther destinations. Of course, he is talking of some other dimension, but still to bring it that the time and space are removed by association with these thoughts. When we associate ourselves with Bhagavan's thoughts, in another talk, Bhagavan brings up beautifully another guided meditation where he says, he is asked, is the happiness residing in the Atman, or is happiness residing in the object, or is happiness residing in the contact between the two? Somebody asks Bhagavan this. This is the question. The sadhaka is having this question. Now, we are all in the presence of Bhagavan, and Bhagavan is replying to us. Each one of us has put this question to Bhagavan. That we are asking Bhagavan, where is happiness residing in? Is it residing in the Atman? Is it residing in an object? Or is it residing in the contact between the self and the object, the subject and the object? Bhagavan says, whenever a contact with a desirable object or memory thereof is experienced, or the removal of contact with an undesirable object or the memory thereof is experienced, there is said to be happiness. But it is better called as pleasure. Whenever a subject-object association brings a pleasure, a happy feeling, it should not be called happiness. It is better called as pleasure. For happiness truly resides only in the absolute, and man seeks only absolute happiness. Pleasure may arise between subject and object contacting in a desirable way, or the removal of an undesirable contact or memories thereof can bring some experience which we falsely call as happiness. Bhagavan says, no, don't call it happiness. Call such association a nice, whatever experience it may be, call it only pleasure. For happiness truly resides only in the absolute. Therefore, to inquire who am I and to abide in the self alone is true happiness, says Bhagavan. Now, when we read this, whenever our mind says, oh, what about that new car that I was planning? Immediately, now, whatever it may be required to actually move the family because of the size and all that, that's different. But when, as a push from within, out of our desire of driving, when the thought comes, one remembers Bhagavan's teachings and says, that is not going to give me happiness. That may move me from here to there, may help in transportation of some bodies from here to there, but that is not happiness. Happiness resides only when the I, the ego, dissolves itself in the self. Bhagavan says. Now, reading this satsang, how to dismiss that? When we repeat that like this, that is satsang. Slowly, we recognize that satsang is that association which brings us peace on the outside, and it is the last point of contact, and that satsang will tell us, as Bhagavan says, inside. He is not this power or that power or more creativity or less creativity. It is only turn inward and find the inner peace. That's why Bhagavan says the true indication that you are in satsang is the peace it brings, is the shanti it brings. With this, we should understand we still have outward turn activities. Where so far as we still go outward, there is a difference between one video and another. There is a difference between one song and another. There is a difference between listening to Bhagavan's Parayanam and some other song. Now, once you turn inward, Kanakappa used to say, then even that Parayanam you should drop. Even that Parayanam you should drop in favor of Atma. Your memory of Parayanam in relation to the other songs, in relation to somebody calling you for some pleasurable trip, the remembrance of Parayanam is satsang. And when associated with Atma, when you are doing Atma Ucharan, when how nicely they chanted, how nicely so and so and so and so chanted comes, we should ask, for whom is this God? Who am I? Because in the Akhanda Atma, there is no thought at all. Till that Akhanda Atma is realized to be our very nature, at which point the very body becomes the satsang. The body becomes the temple in which God lives. We were saying that niche, the sofa, the place before Bhagavan Samadhi, those were the temples, those were the satsangs. Then, as the Atmanishtata starts dawning, we carry our own weather, as they say. The body itself becomes the temple of God, and one need not move an inch to seek satsang. One really is abiding in the Sadvastu. The holy pilgrimage, the holy tirtha, the holy mantra are all here. This is the pilgrimage place. This is whatever the body is said to have more than 60% water. That is tirtham. Shabdaka used to say, when I used to say, now we understand why they do that the Ekadasha Rudram, why they chant before that tirtham and make that water holy and then do abhishekam and then distribute it as prasadam. Because now it is found that the mantram, the chanting, the nature of water, its structure changes. Now, when I mentioned this, that there are experiments going on, then Akka immediately said, then what happens to the water content in the body if we are doing Parayanam? That was so beautiful to hear that if the Parayanam can go through a media and change the water into holy, what about the body in which 60% and above is water already, in which the Parayanam is taking place? That is all Tirtham. And of course, breath becomes even and mantram. And one abides in the self. Till such state is realized to be our very nature, one has to hold the satsang of Atmacharan. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit for 10 minutes of Atmacharan. Before I hand over to Akka, there was this question from Pramodji. Sir, how to treat and understand Ullad Narpadu and Ullad Narpadu Anubandham? We had discussed this in the first introductory talk. What we find is that in the course of our discussions only, we find that Ullad Narpadu is so direct. It goes to the heart of the issue, and Bhagavan doesn't allow us to waste a bit of our energy in that. It is totally focused. It is the direct path. It is not a shortcut. There is no shortcut to this. There is only sadhana, but that is the direct path. Not a bit of energy wasted, directly taking us to Atmachara. But Bhagavan used to say about Shankara and Dakshinamurti Stotram, why he came about writing Dakshinamurti Stotram. When Dakshinamurti himself taught through Mauna only, where was the need for Stotram? Is the question asked. And Bhagavan says, Shankara was so full of compassion that he found that the silence, the teaching in silence could not be imbibed by many. Only a few had done enough sadhana to understand that language. So out of great compassion, he wrote the stuti so that Dakshinamurti Swami could be worshipped and also could be meditated on and could be done parayana on. All this could be done as the last slokam in Dakshinamurti says. So out of compassion, he gave many other supports. Similarly, Bhagavan has given Ullad Narpadu Anubandham. But in fact, the verses were coined before Ullad Narpadu could come about, because the history goes that Bhagavan would compose these verses of Anubandham to help those who come to Bhagavan ask for clarification from scriptures. And that is how those verses develop. And when Muruganar Swami first came to ashram, he found many such verses, 21 in number, and many which had been lost. But these 21 he gathered, and he requested Bhagavan to write a work called Ullad Narpadu, and those entire work was done anew. And these 21 became Anubandham, and Bhagavan composed few more verses till it became 40. That is the history of Anubandham. So to us, if one can stick to Ullad Narpadu and one can stick to Atmacharam, nothing like that. But in my case, I have found reading the talks, listening to Parayanam of Ullad Narpadu, listening to Bhagavan's Parayanam of the ashram, all that, and Ullad Narpadu Anubandham, some of the verses were very, very helpful to me. So my nature was like that, but it does not mean I should superimpose my limitations on others. If you feel Ullad Narpadu is enough, that is enough. But if you need some support, if you feel you are diverting into other areas, some friends are interesting you, some this is interesting you, that is interesting you, then meditating on Anubandham will immediately bring us very close, because these are scriptural statements by great ones picked by Bhagavan, and they are picked by Bhagavan so beautifully that they bring our mind into ekagrata, and Atma-Ucharam is easy for us. So I would like to say that Ullad Narpadu can be a very, very good support to meditation on, Ullad Narpadu Anubandham could be a very good support to meditation on Ullad Narpadu and practice of Atma-Ucharam.
Namo Ramana, prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are now meditating on the Ullad Narpadu Anubandham and the beautiful exposure which Nandakumarji has given to us of the expanded meaning of the word Satsangam. Earlier, a thought had come to me many years back that anything which turns our mind inward is prayer. So that is how Nandakumarji has defined Satsangam for us. That anything that turns the mind to the self is Satsangam. And anything that helps us to abide in the self is satsangam. He mentioned about Arunachala being satsangam. So I remembered the incident when we had gone from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning. Must be some 30 years ago or around that time, to Tiruvannamalai, and there were students with us from the then Ramana Bala Kendra, but the students had grown older than Ramana Balas. They were almost in their youth, growing into their teenage and youth, and therefore they were very exuberant, boisterous, and full of various energetic activities, one may say, even while in the guest rooms. And this could well have disturbed some other visitors there. And the ashram, Sri Ganeshan Anna, who was so kind to all of us at Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, and he brought it to my notice and he said, you need to advise the children to behave in a more disciplined manner. Now, there was an issue for me personally that I could not, at that time, very strongly bring people to discipline. And I was given to more to allow people to get discipline from within themselves, by themselves. But though I did indicate it to them, I had a conflict in my mind regarding this. And then in the course of the day's activities, Ganeshan Anna took all of us to see Kunju Swami. And Kunju Swami, as Ganeshan Anna would always do when he took us to any of these great old devotees of Bhagavan, he would simply ask them to speak something. And he told Swami also, Swami edavadhu sollungo. And it was just like that. So Swami said, right, he started by saying, in Arunachala, there is Jnana Anukkal. There are atoms of Jnana pervading the entire atmosphere around Arunachala. And he said, it does not matter what one does over here. Very sweetly, he said, it does not matter. One may play, one may gossip, one may do something else at Arunachala. But see, these atoms of Jnana which are there, they are very contagious. He asked for the word. You use some word in English. When a disease spreads from one person to another, you say something. We said, Swami, contagious. If that is the case for a mere physical disease, imagine the power of contagion of Jnana which is surrounding Arunachala. And so it will come to somebody who just even merely comes into this atmosphere and is over here. So that is the power of the Satsanga of Arunachala, as Nandakumarji pointed out. And about Bhagavan's Samadhi, Devaraj Mudaliar writes that Bhagavan brought him to understand the power of Bhagavan's Samadhi by repeatedly forcing him to be present at the time when the Samadhi itself was happening. He said, I was just moving here and there. I did not feel very interested in the whole process of Bhagavan's Samadhi, but Bhagavan insisted or brought me to be there in the entire process, and he brought it home to me that his space here in Bhagavan's Samadhi is as vibrant, as alive, as we used to feel his presence in the old hall earlier. And I have earlier shared also, when Swami Ramanananda came to Bhagavan after Bhagavan's Mahanirvana, and he says in the Samadhi of Bhagavan around Ramaneshwara, there was no temple in those days. It was all open with only a covering on the top. And then he says, peacocks used to come sit near the samadhi of Bhagavan. He says he has seen snakes come and go, be on Bhagavan's linga and then go. Dogs, monkeys, all the animals would be in the presence of the Ramaneshwara Linga, very intimately in the presence of Ramaneshwara Linga, as they would be in Bhagavan's Samadhi hall. So we can all experience that presence. And again, as Nandakumarji continued, Bhagavan's presence is there. Everywhere where we turn to him, he has, Devraj Mudliar reprimanded Subramaya for not coming to Bhagavan's Jayanti, saying, we, his children, should gather at his feet during Bhagavan's Jayanti. And Bhagavan said, where can we gather except at his feet? So, wherever there is a gathering, wherever there is a turning inward, and I have experienced this in the Ramana Shrine, and I have experienced it in certain other satsang centers also. The moment that space becomes a Ramana satsang center, and during the course of the time when it is a satsang center, and if it ceases to be the satsang center after some time, that is not there. So Bhagavan comes there at that time. I have experienced it in the Ramana Shrine also on the day prior to the sthapana of the shrine itself, the opening of the shrine, the previous evening, there was work going on. There was polishing of the floor. Some walls were being cleaned. Workmen were all over the place. That the place, the pedestal, Bhagavan's picture had not yet been placed. It had not been brought. And the Prana Pratishtha had not been done. Nothing had happened. And we were making preparations for the big celebration. And as I said, being a young woman at that time, I could get easily agitated as well. And I was worried about the preparation. Something disturbed me. And because of the disturbance, I walked away from the scene of the preparation happening outside into this hall, which at that time had not literally become Bhagavan's shrine, but it was just being constructed. And the moment I came into the hall near the place where Bhagavan, and I just went round, my mind became absolutely calm and peaceful. And at that point, Bhagavan showed to me, I am here, as Nandakumarji pointed out. And this has been the experience for all of us in every space where we gather thinking about him. Nandakumarji would often say that Bhagavan comes to the South Bangalore Center at that time. And so he would insist on taking the satsang at that time. And he says repeatedly, Bhagavan comes whenever we sit for self-inquiry, the greatest satsang, with the satsang with the self itself. And therefore, Bhagavan says in Ramana Gita, Sarva Klesha Nivritti Syat Phalam Atma Vicharataha. The fruit of self-inquiry is the cure for all problems. And the same phrase which is used by Sadhu Om Swami for Bhagavan and his name, Phalamilam Evadu. The same phrase Bhagavan uses for self-inquiry, which is that self-inquiry is Bhagavan himself, come in the form of the question, who am I? And it is his extraordinary grace that he allows us to remember him in his form, sweet form as Ramana, in the form of all his devotees who are ever enjoying that satsanga of his, and in the form of Ramaneshwara, and in the form of Arunachala, and in the form of all his works. Whichever word at that time he lights up for us, he comes in that form to take us within, and he has come in the form of the Anubandham as well, and to light up the path to us to turn within to the self and abide over there. Om Namo Bhagavate Srimana.
Namo Ramana.
Namo
Namo Ramana.
Ramana.